Most people live their lives avoiding risk like it's a plague. They choose comfort over courage, security over stretch, and the familiar over the future. They settle for what is easy rather than pursue what is possible. Why? Because risk demands something that fear doesn't want to give: faith. You see, the average person is more afraid of losing than they are excited about winning. That mindset keeps them stuck. It convinces them to play small, think safe, and never reach beyond what they've already done. But here's the truth. Everything you want, but don't have yet, is on the other side of a risk you haven't taken. Most people think risk is reckless, but the real danger is in regret, not risk. Regret is the slow decay of potential. It's the voice that whispers, "What if?" when the time to act has long passed. Risk, on the other hand, is the price you pay to grow, to learn, and to truly live. Now, people avoid risk because they fear failure, but failure is a teacher, not a tombstone. Every risk that doesn't go your way gives you wisdom you can't buy in a book. You either win or you grow, and in both cases, you're moving forward. Others avoid risk because they wait for certainty. But success doesn't come to those who wait for the perfect moment. It comes to those who create the moment by making a move. The timing is never perfect, but your decision can be. Stop waiting. Start walking. There's also a fear of judgment. What will they think? Here's a tip. Most people aren't thinking about you. They're too busy thinking about themselves. Live your life, not someone else's opinion of it. Some don't take risks because they've already tried once and failed. So what? That was practice. Get back in the game. No great victory comes without bruises. Every master was once a beginner who refused to give up after falling. The truth is, risk is how you build courage, strength, and resilience. When you stretch beyond your limits, you discover you're more capable than you thought. Your world expands in direct proportion to the risks you're willing to take. So why should you take risks? Because comfort zones are beautiful places where nothing grows. Because your purpose will never be found in your excuses. Because if you don't take a chance, you'll never create change. The people who do great things in life are not the ones who waited for permission. They're the ones who looked fear in the eye and walked forward anyway. Take the risk. Make the call. Launch the idea. Speak the truth. Choose the unknown. It's not that people don't have dreams. They do. It's just that those dreams often get buried beneath the weight of fear. The fear of embarrassment, the fear of rejection, the fear of falling short in front of others. That fear becomes louder than the quiet whisper of hope. And eventually they stop trying. But think about this. When the fear of failure becomes stronger than the desire for success, you start living defensively. You avoid opportunities. You talk yourself out of good ideas. You shrink in the presence of possibility. You convince yourself that staying in the same place is the wiser choice, not realizing that safety can become a slow death of potential. Failure isn't final. It's part of the process. Every successful person has failed, often more times than they can count. But they didn't let the fear of it stop them. They learned, they adjusted, and they tried again. What separates them from the rest isn't luck or talent. It's the courage to act in spite of fear. You can't tiptoe your way into a meaningful life. You have to be willing to look foolish sometimes. You have to accept that not every move will be perfect, but each move will make you better. Failure doesn't mean you're finished. It means you're in motion. So the question isn't, what if I fail? The better question is, what if I succeed and never gave myself the chance? Because the pain of discipline and effort is far lighter than the pain of regret. Let your hunger for success outweigh your hesitation. Let your vision be stronger than your doubt. Don't let the fear of failure rob you of the life you were meant to live. Take the shot, make the call, write the book, start the business, learn the skill, chase the goal. Yes, you might fall, but what if you fly? Comfort is the enemy of growth. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most powerful truths you'll ever come to understand. The moment you settle into what's easy, familiar, and safe, you begin to drift away from the person you were meant to become. Growth doesn't live in the comfort zone. It lives just beyond it, where things are a little uncertain, a little challenging, and sometimes even a little uncomfortable. Comfort gives you peace, but it also puts you to sleep. It whispers, "You're fine where you are," even when you're not fulfilled. It keeps your days predictable, your routines easy, and your challenges minimal. And while that might sound pleasant, there's a price you pay for staying in that zone for too long. You stop expanding, stretching, reaching. And then you pale in comparison to the spectrum of self-improvement that we can all grow from. You stop trying things that move you forward. You stop trying things that stay in that zone for too long. You stop expanding, stretching, reaching. Now let's be clear. Comfort is not the problem when it follows growth. You work hard, you push, you grow, then you enjoy the rest that comes after. That kind of comfort is earned. But when comfort becomes your goal instead of a reward, it starts to limit you. It convinces you to avoid risk, avoid discomfort, avoid anything that might test your ability. And that's when you start shrinking. Growth requires pressure. Just like muscles grow when you push them, your mindset grows when it's challenged. Your skills grow when they're stretched. Your confidence grows when it's tested. But none of that happens if you always do what you've always done. Think about the people you admire. The ones who built something meaningful, overcame challenges, made a real impact. None of them lived a life of constant comfort. They faced fears, endured failures, stepped into rooms they didn't feel ready for, and through that discomfort, they grew into someone who could handle more. When you step outside your comfort zone, something powerful happens. You realize you're capable of more than you thought. You learn new things, you meet new people, you develop resilience. You stop being someone who reacts to life and start being someone who shapes it. The reason most people don't grow isn't because they're not smart or talented, it's because they've made comfort their standard. They avoid the gym because it's tiring. They avoid the difficult conversation because it's awkward. They avoid starting the project because they might fail. But the more you avoid, the smaller your world becomes. There's an old saying, ships are safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are built for. The same is true for you. You weren't built to just coast through life avoiding hardship. You were built to build, to create, to lead, to stretch. And none of that happens without a willingness to be uncomfortable for a while. Comfort says, stay here. It's easier. Growth says, go there. It's worth it. Comfort says, don't try. You might fail. Growth says, this is good enough. Growth says, you were made for more. You don't have to leap off a cliff to escape comfort. Sometimes growth starts with small steps. Wake up earlier. Read more. Start the conversation. Say yes to the opportunity, even if you're not 100% ready. Every time you push against comfort, you build strength. And that strength becomes momentum, and that momentum turns into change. Here's what's even more important. If you don't make a decision to grow, life will eventually force you to. Circumstances will change. Things you depended on will shift. And when that happens, if you haven't built the muscle of growth, you'll find yourself overwhelmed. But if you've trained yourself to stretch, to adapt, to keep learning, you'll rise. So ask yourself honestly, where have I gotten too comfortable? What am I avoiding because it feels a little too hard, too new, too different? And more importantly, what's it costing me? Your best life won't come by doing what's easy. It will come by doing what's necessary. Don't trade your potential for short-term ease. Choose growth. Chase challenge. Embrace discomfort. Because that's where the real transformation begins. Failure is feedback. That's all it is. It's not a life sentence. It's not a label. It's not the end. It's simply information, a message from life that says, here's what didn't work. Adjust and try again. But most people don't treat it that way. They take failure personally. They let it define them instead of refine them. And that's where the problem begins. When something doesn't go your way, you've got two choices. You can see it as a sign to stop, or you can see it as a signal to learn. Those who grow, those who become something more than they were, choose the second. They study it. They ask questions. They dig for lessons. They understand that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process. Think about how a child learns to walk. They fall down a lot. But no one looks at that child and says, walking's not for you. No, we expect them to fall. We encourage them to get back up. We clap for the effort. Why? Because we know that failure is how learning looks in the beginning. It's messy, imperfect, and full of setbacks. But every fall is a step forward because it teaches balance, control, awareness, and soon enough, the walking becomes running. But somewhere along the way, as we grow older, we start to fear failure. We tie our identity to outcomes. We get embarrassed. We stop trying new things because we're afraid of looking foolish. And that's when progress slows down. That's when people plateau. Not because they don't have the potential, but because they stopped being willing to fail. In truth, every failure you've had holds a message. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe the strategy was off. Maybe your preparation wasn't deep enough. Maybe your mindset wasn't ready. But unless you treat the failure as feedback, you'll miss the lesson. And if you miss the lesson, you're bound to repeat the mistake. Some people fail and say, see, I knew I couldn't do it. Others fail and say, now I know how not to do it. That difference in thinking makes all the difference in results. One mindset shuts the door, the other keeps it open. You've probably heard about inventors, entrepreneurs, leaders who failed dozens, even hundreds of times before succeeding. Those weren't wasted attempts. Each one gave them a piece of the puzzle. One taught them what materials didn't work. Another taught them which audience wasn't right. Another exposed a flaw in their plan. But they stayed in the game long enough to use what they learned, and that's what made all the difference. If you want to grow, you have to be willing to look at failure without shame. Look at it like a coach, not a critic. Let it guide you, not define you. Ask yourself, what did I learn? What would I do differently next time? How can I improve? That's how failure becomes fuel. It stops being a burden and becomes a blueprint. And here's the key. The faster you can extract the lesson, the faster you can move forward. You don't have to dwell in the pain. You don't have to replay the mistake 100 times in your mind. You just have to get the message and use it. Some of your best insights, your strongest qualities, your deepest wisdom didn't come from your wins. They came from what went wrong. The heartbreak, the setback, the business that didn't work, the plan that fell through. Those were the moments that built your character, sharpened your thinking, and taught you resilience. That's the power of failure when you treat it the right way. So next time you fall short, don't shut down. Don't throw in the towel. Instead, open your notebook, Write it down, break it down, learn from it. Then step back into the ring smarter, stronger, more prepared. Success is built on lessons. Lessons come from experiences. And the best experiences are often wrapped in failure. Don't fear it. Use it. Because failure isn't the end of the story. It's just one chapter. And if you read it right, it might be the chapter that turns everything around. Waiting for certainty is a trap. It sounds wise. It sounds responsible. But in reality, it's one of the most subtle ways people avoid taking action. They say, I'll start when I'm sure. I'll move forward when the timing is right. I'll decide when I know exactly what will happen. The problem is that moment rarely comes. Life doesn't hand you guarantees. It offers you opportunities, and opportunities don't wait around for you to feel 100% ready. Most people don't realize that chasing certainty is just another form of fear. It's fear dressed up in the clothes of logic. It looks smart, it sounds mature, but at its core, it's hesitation. It's the fear of making the wrong choice, the fear of failing, the fear of looking foolish. So instead of acting, people pause. They research endlessly. They overthink. They plan and replan, all in the name of getting it just right. But by the time they finally feel ready, the window has closed. Certainty is an illusion. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Not success, not results, not even tomorrow. You can have the best strategy, the smartest mentors, and the clearest path, and still things can go differently than expected. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't act. It means you should stop demanding certainty and start developing courage. You build your future not with perfect information, but with bold decisions. Success is not about knowing everything. It's about being willing to start anyway. It's about stepping forward when the path is only partially visible, because as you move, the rest of the road starts to appear. Clarity often comes after commitment, not before it. The people who achieve great things in life aren't the ones who waited for every light to turn green. They're the ones who said, I don't have all the answers, but I'm moving forward anyway. They learned to trust their preparation. They learned to act with the knowledge they had. And when they didn't know, they learned along the way. Action brings answers. Motion reveals direction. You don't get momentum by standing still. You get it by doing something, making the call, starting the project, taking the first step. The more you move, the more confident you become. And with that confidence, you become capable of handling the uncertainty you were once afraid of. Too many people waste years waiting for the perfect time that never shows up. They wait until they feel completely sure before they begin. But life rewards the bold, not the hesitant. If you're always waiting for certainty, you'll miss opportunities, you'll delay progress, and you'll watch others pass you by, not because they're better, but because they were willing to go first. Now, this doesn't mean you act recklessly. Preparation matters, wisdom matters. But don't confuse endless preparation with progress. There's a point where more thinking isn't thinking. It's stalling. There's a point where another week of planning is actually a week of lost opportunity. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and trust that if you move with purpose, the path will reveal itself. The first version might not be perfect. The first attempt might not succeed, but neither of those things disqualify you. They qualify you. They shape you. They teach you what works and what doesn't. They give you the experience most people never get because they never even started. Don't wait for the fear to disappear before you move. Move with the fear. Take it with you. You'll discover that it loses power the more you act. You don't need absolute confidence. You just need enough to take the next step. If you're waiting for a sign, this is it. If you're waiting for the right moment, it's now. If you're waiting to know everything, let it go. You won't. But you can know this. You were made to move forward, not to freeze in indecision. Let progress be your priority, not perfection. Let action be your answer, not anxiety. Because life doesn't reward those who wait for certainty. It rewards those who are willing to start with what they have and build the rest as they go. Regret is most people don't see it that way. See, regret doesn't come all at once. It creeps in. Slowly. Silently. A little sigh when you think about what might have been. A little hesitation when you see someone else doing what you once dreamed of doing. A quiet discomfort when you realize you've become a spectator in your own life instead of the author. And the older you get, the louder regret becomes. Not because your opportunities are gone, but because you now see how many you walked past. How many times you said maybe later? How many times you convinced yourself it was too risky, too hard, or too soon? But now you know you weren't protecting yourself. You were postponing your life. People work hard to avoid failure. They work hard to avoid judgment. But very few work hard to avoid regret. And yet, of all the things that can weigh on your mind, regret weighs the most. It doesn't just say you failed. It says you never even tried. You can recover from a mistake. You can bounce back from failure. But regret is harder to shake because it's tied to time. You can't go back and relive a moment. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the only thing left is the thought, what if I had gone for it? So if you're going to fear something, don't fear falling. Fear standing still. Don't fear the risk of trying. Fear the cost of not trying. Because at least when you try, you gain something. You gain wisdom, courage, experience. But when you don't try, you gain nothing but questions and self-doubt. Now here's the twist. Most people regret the things they didn't do far more than the things they did. Ask someone nearing the end of their journey what they regret most, and it's rarely the business that failed, or the job they left, or the risk that didn't pan out. It's the phone call they never made, the book they never wrote, the leap they didn't take, the words they never said. That's what haunts people. So how do you avoid regret? You act. You step forward, even when it's uncomfortable. You try, even when you're unsure. You say what needs to be said. You take the class. You make the move. You live with a mindset that says, I'd rather fail at something I believe in than succeed at something I settled for.